He clipped me at the top of the hour, explaining that I don't understand it, and now I do understand it. So my social media all day is going to be people calling me stupid for not realising something that I've subsequently realised.
I would never call you stupid, James.
Well, yeah, you won't, but plenty of people will. Put your hand down, Keith. The point being that no one is saying if you have a meal you won't catch coronavirus, but if you can only go to the pub and have a meal, then the number of people going to the pub and the number of pubs open will be vastly reduced, and therefore the opportunities for any of those people, either the ones in the pubs that would have been in the pubs that aren't open or the ones that would have gone to the pub if they didn't have to have a meal, their risk ratio, if you like, plummets. So the overall risk to the nation of someone catching coronavirus reduces precisely because there will be fewer opportunities to do it if they can't go to the pub or they can't just drink in a pub. That's the logic.
I will put it to you, James.
Go on, then.
A well-run pub with coronavirus systems fully implemented, like mine.
Yes.
Mine's just purely a wet pub, specialised in castails and music.
Oh, lovely.
Right, so I won't be opening anytime soon.
No.
I've been closed since mid-October because Liverpool was one of the first places to be put into Tier 3. So I won't be opening. I don't think I'll be opening before Christmas.
So they're just not. Because you're someone like you spent some money presumably on getting everything COVID safe.
Of course, yes.
Put in some elbow grease, done all the heavy lifting, and pointless because you're getting treated exactly the same as if you'd still got sawdust on the floor and you hadn't been near a perspex screen or a hand sanitizer in your life.
You've hit the nail right on the head, James.
That's why they pay me the silly money, Frank.
I know. I wish I got your money, man.
Take it. I'll come and spend some in Liverpool. What's the name of the pub?
The name of the pub, thanks for the free advert, is the Water Pudlian in South Road, Waterloo.
There you go. So hopefully at Christmas, but that's the problem, and that is the point. In that, Frank gets treated in exactly the same way as the fella over the road who is still denying coronavirus and has got a big picture of the Magna Carta up in his front window insisting that people can come in because he refuses to consent. I can't remember what these poor souls are doing, but the hairdresser got arrested for it the other day or got fined tens of thousands of pounds. 11 o'clock is the time.
On your radio, on Global Player and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC. From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, most areas in England are expected to be placed into the highest 2 tiers of coronavirus restrictions when the details are announced shortly. The new system will replace the national lockdown from next Wednesday. It's understood very few areas will be in Tier 1, meaning most will remain banned from meeting up with other households indoors. Manchester is expected to remain under the strictest of rules, and Liverpool Mayor Joe Anderson thinks his city will be in Tier 2, following the rollout of mass testing.
Our figures have shown a real decrease, and if you take the asymptomatic tests that we've done in the mass testing out of it, we're actually in Tier 1 area because the rate would be so low. So, we're hopeful the evidence is there.
The Scottish Government is urging people to keep their Christmas bubbles to a maximum of 8 people. It's published its own guidance after the rules on allowing 3 households to mix over the festive period were agreed by the 4 UK nations. Our reporter Fraser Knight has been reading through it.
Well, the Scottish Government says if you don't need to meet others over Christmas, you shouldn't feel you have to. But bubbles should be limited to just 3 households. And it's advised that's kept to a maximum of 8 people. Children under 12 won't be counted in that. Flatmates who plan on joining different Christmas bubbles should also isolate from one another for a week beforehand.
The Chancellor admits current government borrowing during the pandemic is not sustainable, but has refused to confirm taxes will need to rise. Rishi Sunak has also been defending his decision to cut foreign aid and a pay freeze for some public sector workers. The owner of the All Bar One, Harvester and Toby Carvery chains is cutting around 1,300 jobs. Mitchells and Butlers says it suffered a pre-tax loss of £123 million this year due to the impact of the pandemic. And a £1.5 million research programme's been launched aiming to find a way for humans to heal without scarring. The 5-year project has been led by the University of Bristol. It'll include studying the zebrafish because it can regrow tissue and has many of the same genes as humans. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was down 37 points at 63.54. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.12. And the weather, most parts dry with light winds and sunny spells this afternoon. Cloudy in the far south with the chance of some rain at times. Chilly for many, a high of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom, I'm Dominic Ellis.
Lola should be saying a virtual hello to her new clients right now. But instead, she's saying, awkward. Why, Lola? Why set up a fancy new loft office if your Wi-Fi doesn't reach it? Never fear. With BT Complete Wi-Fi, you'll be back with a bing. Only BT guarantees reliable Wi-Fi in every room or £100 back. Why choose anyone else? BT. Beyond limits.
Up to 3 discs to guarantee 10 Mbps in every room or £100 off your next bill. Terms apply.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 4 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I don't think there is a massive mystery surrounding the substantial meal rule, but it is... maybe this will sound a bit like a reverse ferret on my part, or a defence of my failure to understand sooner what is, when you think about it, bleeding obvious. Although there are a couple of phone lines free if you want to challenge my suggestion that it's bleeding obvious. It's 11:04. I reckon it's clearly just designed to turn down the volume, turn down the temperature. So here are 1,000 people in an environment where the risk of contracting coronavirus is higher than it would be if they'd stayed at home, right? 1,000 people in an environment where the risk of contracting coronavirus is higher than it would have been if they'd stayed at home. And by bringing in the substantial meal rule, there are now 400 or 600 people in an environment where the risk of contracting coronavirus is higher than it would have been if they'd stayed at home. So for economic reasons, they don't say everybody stay at home. And for political reasons, they can't say everybody should stay at home. But why they can't make it clearer that this is simply designed to, if you think of it as a tap, it's designed to lower the water, you turn the tap, there's still water coming out, but there is less water coming out at a slower rate than there would be if you turned it on full. So all pubs open, no substantial meal requirement, is your tap at absolute full blast, okay? No pubs open, is your tap tightly screwed off, and you can only go to pubs and have a substantial meal. Is tap turned, I don't know what the percentage is, let's say 40% on, and that just means that you will be seeing a reduction rather than a removal or an eradication of the problem, and that's it. I don't think that I should have had to work that out for myself, but the fact that I can, and I have with your help, suggests that the problem isn't necessarily as acute or quite the same as we thought it was at 10 o'clock. What our last caller in Liverpool made clear, though, and this holds true across the whole hospitality sector, actually, is there's absolutely no route. I've got that funny feeling that we've stumbled on something quite important, and usually when I get that funny feeling, it turns out to be true. It was when last time I got it on a really massive scale, when we started speaking to test and trace workers who were telling us that they hadn't actually had any work at all for 3 weeks. We thought they must be joking, and then the phones went boom. Almost a Hamilton reference there. And I've got that feeling here that there's a huge problem here with the one-size-fits-all approach to it. So the establishments, the businessmen and women who have spent money, energy and expertise on making their establishments as safe as possible are, in the context of wet pubs at least, being treated identically to the business people who've done naffle. They might even have stuck a Freeman of the Land poster up in their window and claimed that they don't have to obey the laws, right? Move it on to the pubs that are serving substantial meals. They're all being treated the same as well, regardless of how careful. I don't know. I don't know whether that was avoidable, but it seems to me to be relevant. Let's go to Mike, who's in Chesterfield. Mike, what's going on?
Hi, James. First time caller.
Very well.
Enjoy your show.
It's all right.
I think the I think it's also to do with their fear of perhaps people going from pub to pub crawling.
Yes.
If you're having a substantial meal, then you're going to spend a fair amount of time. You're probably not then going to go to another establishment.
You're not going to have 4 substantial meals in 4 different pubs between opening and closing time, are you?
I could probably manage 2, but I couldn't manage 4.
It's Christmas. And that's it. And again, that makes sense. But why are we having to work this out for ourselves?
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is just odd, right? I mean, maybe Matt Hancock, hopefully he's listening. I know they've usually got me on at the moment. You can tell by all the complaints we get. But if he's listening, Matt, just explain it. And of course it means that people will not be tempted to go to 4 or 5 different pubs. That's 4 or 5 different environments where the likelihood of catching coronavirus is higher than it would have been if you'd stayed at home.
Yeah, and I think that theory is overrated because of the effort you have to go to a pub now, and you have to sort of register and you have to sit at tables.
Yeah, but you're how old are you? How old are you?
Oh, I was 65.
Yeah, see, I could tell that you were old and sensible, you see, Michael, like me, 49 next month, old and sensible. So we think of the pub through the lens of our own experience. We think of the pub as being what a pub is when we are in it, and pub users using a pub like what we use a pub. So you got 222-year-olds over there having a completely different experience, and that's one of the reasons why the wet pubs have shut, because those are more likely to be the honeypots around which the younger, more raucous.
Maybe they are in the city, but certainly in places like Chesterfield, the pure wet pubs actually probably have an older clientele.
Oh no, you've got because they're the pubs for the what you might call the professional drinker or the seasoned drinker, as in the person, someone who perhaps goes to a pub on his own because he really likes beer and he likes the atmosphere. Not because he wants to tie one on and get off with as many people as possible before midnight. Oh Lord above, so that doesn't work either, does it?
No, not really.
What are you going to do?
It's a shame because so many pubs have put so much effort into making sure that they are COVID safe.
Yes.
But they're probably safer now it's safer than going to the supermarket.
It could be, actually. I mean, apart from the masks, I guess the masks in the pubs are pertinent. I was in a massive Sainsbury's yesterday, and pretty much everybody that I saw had a mask on. If you're in a pub having a meal, you're not going to wear a mask. And that pre this lockdown, when you had to put one on during Eat Out to help out, when you got up to go to the loo and then take it off again when you got back to your table, it was doable. But again, it was all down to the messaging. Mike, thank you. Becky is just up the road in Manchester. Becky, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi James. So we've spoken before, I'm a solicitor that deals with sort of licensing and regulatory advice for bars and restaurants. And yeah, I think sort of what you've said about, I suspect the reasoning behind it is, to reduce risk. I think the substantial meal thing probably sort of comes, like one of your previous callers, the restaurant owner, was saying, from sort of a licensing perspective, in that you will find that there are a number of premises licences that have conditions that require a substantial meal in ordinary times.
Yes.
And often there are parts of the country where there are a huge concentration of licensed premises that have real issues with drunken disorderly behaviour and so on. Which have policies sort of against the grant of new licences, and that's one of the only ways of getting yourself a new licence in those sorts of areas. The West End of London's one, for example. If you want to open up a new place there, then one of the ways of doing that would be to offer a condition on your licence that you will only serve alcohol with a substantial meal, and the rationale behind that is that if you're eating a meal, you're unlikely to get massively intoxicated.
So that's going to be part of it as well, part of the reasoning.
I think so.
And the more massively intoxicated one is, the more likely one is to start breathing and spluttering all over other humans.
Yeah, and that's what they said about the curfew, wasn't it? The idea of the curfew is that as people get more intoxicated, social distancing comes down.
But that didn't work.
That's the idea behind it. Quite. And I think this is the same. I don't think it works for a number of reasons that have been discussed today.
And then there's the other reasons why it's not necessarily not a case of not working, but a very strong case of not fair, which is if the rationale is, younger clientele getting on one, as we used to say, which is a real and present danger, but an awful lot of wet pubs, and you'll know this from your work helping licensees, are not designed to be what an old boss of mine used to call an attitude adjustment centre, i.e. you get as leathered as you can as quickly as you can. A lot of possibly older drinkers in pubs that look after their pipes and choose their beers quite carefully are destinations for completely different reasons from the rationale for closing them.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a pub up the road here in Manchester that Sasha Lord's just given some money to keep them open. And I think that the idea behind that was, it's a local pub where sort of older people go in and, like you said, to previous callers, sit on their own and have a pint, and that's
read the paper, read a book, or maybe even have a chat.
Exactly.
With another local. Who is Sasha Lord?
So he's the nighttime advisor to Andy Burnham.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
And he's done quite a lot of stuff, talking about the impact that this is having on the industry, and it's huge. It's huge percentages of wet leg pubs that just don't think they'll reopen. And your previous caller was saying, absolutely. And your previous caller was saying, people have put a lot of effort into COVID security, but financially as well. If we're talking about fairness, I was sort of listening to Matt Hancock the other day, and he said, I feel very sorry for hospitality, and that's sort of all he said. I've got clients who spent tens of thousands of pounds on marquees because the idea previously in previous tiers was that you could sit outside in groups of up to 6.
You're going to make me cross.
So they spent tens of thousands of pounds on a marquee thinking, right, and I've got clients invested in that because that will get me through to Christmas. I've got some heaters, people will sit outside even in December.
Yes.
And now they're going to be closed. So that, he's thinking...
That is appalling. I hadn't even thought of that. I'm glad you got through that because I mean, it's as if the people who have strived the hardest to keep their businesses afloat and accommodate the requirements and restrictions of coronavirus management are going to be hit the hardest.
Exactly, because they've invested thinking, here's and this is what we said when they reopened in July. The industry got almost no guidance on what they were supposed to do. In July, it was all abide by your own risk assessment. So everyone went for it. They really went for it, and they thought, what can we do? One-way systems, their own track and trace systems, because even that wasn't a legal requirement. Hand sanitizer, menus, apps. Everything's online, more staff to make sure we can do table service, etc., etc. Then the tiers came in and there were more specific requirements. So the industry went, okay, we'll do that. Let's liven up our outdoor space. Let's do this, let's do that. Everything that they've been able to do, the good operators in our industry have done. And even then...
And they've got nothing to show for it. They've got absolutely nothing to show for it.
Yeah, if they're in tier 3, then they will still be closed, like you say, whether and like you said briefly, whether they've invested all of that money or time.
I mean, it is just another skip fire, isn't it? It really is a hellscape. You probably won't want to answer this, and you might not be able to. But in percentage terms, what proportion of your clientele are looking at the worst case scenarios now for next year?
I don't know whether I'd say my clientele personally, but sort of in terms of the industry stuff I'm looking at least a third are pretty sure they won't reopen.
And here, forgive me for jumping in again, but this is, I don't know why. I wasn't like this as a younger man, but as I get older, Becky, my relationship with pubs is becoming something it's quite important to me. It's quite precious, actually, and it makes me think of family and community and home and all that sort of thing. But if they do go under, is there any way of having a punt at the question of how likely they are to be replaced, as in, someone else takes over the premises, someone else starts from scratch, or whether or not? Actually, one of my cousins sent me a picture of my grandma's old pub in Pudsey, in just outside Leeds the other day, which has been turned into flats. Or will they be gone forever? Because there is already an industry under threat.
Yeah, I think there will be opportunities.
Yes.
There will be there'll be some businesses that have done strangely have done well out of this. And some there'll be some businesses that are reasonably cash rich and can look at these opportunities, because I suppose particularly in sort of town centre sites, you're not necessarily going to see them turned into housing. So there'll be some opportunities, but I think a lot of them, and particularly in terms of this new tier system, when I say a third, I'm talking about the industry as a whole.
Right. No, I get it. So percentages
of wet leg pubs.
Yeah. Well, that's the scary thing.
And you know, they are. I don't want to sort of over dramatise it, but you know, when we talk we talk about all of the things that have gone wrong this year and everything that's going on in the country.
I know what time it is.
But one of the things that I think is great about being British, great about our culture, is the pub.
Yes, and that is what worries me. I sense, Becky, if I don't interrupt you now, you, like me, would be capable of talking all the way through to Sheila time, but the causes for concern are acute, considerable, and I think growing. It's 11:18.
LBC.
The first time my housemates see it, they're like... We all get in, seatbelts on, flick that switch to turn on the motor, and we're off. I say, connect me, and the bass goes... And everyone's loving it when we hit the road. Back home from another mini electric journey, we're like... Search Mini Electric and don't just drive it, feel it.
Ah, the great British road. Where mobiles are set aside, the TV goes off, the family, and everything stops. For the perfect roast, Bisto Best will do. Made with real meat juices and deep rich roasted flavour.
Off Black Friday. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is the sound of business owners bossing their day with Sage.
Fish delivery, bossed. Invoices, sorted.
Clients work out, boss. Expenses smashed.
Tax return, done.
Take control of business. New financial tools from Sage. Boss it. Get 6 months free then from £12 at sage.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Protect your home for less this Black Friday with up to £100 money back on selected British Gas Home Care boiler cover. No heating or home nightmare. The repair bill. British Gas Home and repair and includes all parts and labour. Hurry, up to £100 money back. Ends 30th of November. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply.
Deep mud, sticky mud, splashy mud, muddy mud. Is that mud? Construction site mud mixed with cement and sand mud. Mud, glorious mud. If your business can't escape it, you'd better embrace it. The new Ford Transit Trail. Limited slip technology, so you don't slip with it.
Which includes the Transit Custom with mechanical limited slip differential technology.
As long as you're not driving, close your eyes, clear your mind, and try to visualize nothing. Yeah, that's it. Absolutely nothing. Which is